Hi, this is Eric Walker, the original Mace, the OM in the universe. Sorry, Sam Jackson. And you're listening to What a Piece of Junk podcast.
Hello, Space Junkies, and welcome to episode 37 of What a Piece of Junk, the Star Wars podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. This episode, we are proud to be getting ready to discuss Chapter 11, the Heiress of Star Wars, The Mandalorian. And what an episode it was, and what a great week it has been for those of us chilling out here on the Drunken Gungan, cruising our way from Trask toward Endor for reasons that will become obvious later. Joining me on this episode is, of course, my usual co-pilots, Derek Marsh and the gooey chewy Dave Filclone, man of 1,000 nicknames. It is Mr. Nathan Miracle. And we've got one more extra special guest joining us later this episode. But for now, Derek, how's it going, man?
It's going crazy enough that, again, we're already talking the next episode of The Mandalorian. I love this coming out weekly. It's a great vibe, gives us time to talk about it. But we also have some exciting things here that this upcoming Tuesdays, we're recording Sunday, November 15th. But in 2 days, the next holiday special for Star Wars Legos is coming out. So that's exciting.
Yes, that'll be crazy. The original Star Wars holiday special is, I was going to say famous, but the right word I think is more infamous for how it was received by Star Wars fans, and especially for how it was received by George Lucas himself. But yeah, you're right. Coming up this Tuesday is going to be the next Star Wars holiday special, this time in the very brickified era of Star Wars Legos.
You can say, Scott, that it's got a cult following.
I could say it's got a cult following, and that would be super appropriate with the overall theme of this week's episode of The Mandalorian. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Nathan, how's your week been going, man?
Not too bad. Now, regular listeners of our show might be aware of your recent roof troubles. I am having some of my own now, so not so great on that front. But this weekend, I was able to paint an indoor bunker model for Star Wars Legion. So I'm very excited to get that on the table.
Yeah, and that looks nice, man.
Very excited to get something indoor related painted in relation to that surprise that you mentioned just a minute ago.
Yes. And so I think we're getting a hail here on the radio network. Coming in, it's, I believe we have Mr. Eric Walker, the original Mace from Star Wars Caravan of Courage. Eric, are you there?
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
Yeah. That mic's a little low.
Is it? Okay, hold on. Let me turn it up. Can you hear me now? Is it better?
Oh, yes, yeah. Much better. Thank you so much for joining us, Eric.
Hey, guys. How you guys doing?
Great. Glad to have you back, Eric. Appreciate it, man.
You got it, guys. Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, this is Eric's actually his third time being on an episode of What a Piece of Junk. First, we had him as a special guest when we did a retrospective of the Ewok adventure films, which of course starred Eric as Mace Tawani, the original Mace in Star Wars.
OM.
That's right, the OM. And then he was able to join us also earlier this year, before the dark times, when we had our retrospective about the 40th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back, because Eric is a big 1980s guy, and that was a big 1980s thing. Absolutely. And we're so glad to have you back. So we're going to be talking about Chapter 11 of The Mandalorian, the Heiress. But before we jump into all that, as you all know, we like to tell you where you can find us on the interwebs. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network in our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com, or you can look up FPNet on the Podbean app. And of course, you can find What a Piece of Junk and all the other great Fandom Podcast Network shows on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify, Google Play, and now worldwide on the famous iHeartRadio network. We are on Facebook at the What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast group that Derek runs for us. I do check the show's email between episodes, so email me at whatapieceofjunkpod@gmail.com. I run our Twitter feed at What Wars, and you can find us on Instagram as part of the Fandom Podcast Network. Derek, tell folks about those Apple Podcast reviews, please, sir.
Yeah, so head on over. You can, as Scott mentioned, on many different ways of viewing us as listeners. We appreciate it. But if you head on over to the Apple Store, and when you do download this episode, leave us a review. Again, we'll take whatever out there. We're doing this for fun. We appreciate it. But at the end, leave those 5-star reviews because, again, those Wookiee children need to eat, and we all want to keep our arms. Right, Nathan?
Good times, good times.
Yes.
And now it's time for us to check in with Mr. Eric Walker and the original Mace. And Eric, before we jump into our T-shirt segment, I wanted to check in with you to see what you've been up to recently. It looks like you have a nice little friend there with you. He's cooing and oohing and eyeing, and it's the child.
The child has joined us today.
Yeah.
How are you?
Oh, he's so beautiful.
Yeah.
He even makes noise.
It's so creepy. It's real life.
Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. No, I also have something that I do. That's I do a weekly review. We've been doing The Mandalorian. You might have seen some of those. Maybe that's why you offered to have me come on board. It's called All for Sci-Fi, and we're at allforsci-fi.com. But we're on in all social media. We're there on All for Sci-Fi. Just spell out the whole word, because it's not just about, it is, for me, it's a lot about Star Wars like it is for you guys, but it's about, we love all of sci-fi. So
yeah, totally.
That's why I wanted to start that. Yeah.
I've watched a few of your episodes because you do a live stream, but then of course it's also recorded for later.
Yes.
And you guys have been talking a little Star Trek Discovery. I think the boys will be generous enough to let me do a little Star Trek diversion here. What are your thoughts about Star Trek Discovery season 3 so far?
Oh, they're hitting it out of the park.
Yeah, man, so good.
Oh.
I know that Nathan
Better.
and I have been watching.
In fact, it reminds me a lot of Star Wars. It's less like Star Trek and more like Star Wars.
It is, because for those who haven't maybe been keeping up with it, the Discovery crew has traveled so far into the future that the Federation itself is actually on the brink of collapse due to some catastrophe that I won't get into here. But it gives them that sort of almost lawless frontier vibe that we all know, you especially have experienced firsthand knowledge of that
Western,
frontier. Yes. And so we see what Starfleet officers would do if they were faced with a more Star Trek style galaxy.
So we talk a lot about Star Trek Discovery every week, and it's they've traveled 930 years, like you mentioned, into the future, and the Federation pretty much it's no longer on Earth. Earth has actually started their own thing to protect the planet Earth, and the Federation is just scattered all over the place because of an event that happens on it. And we won't get into those details, but like you said, it is a lot more like a Western, just like The Mandalorian. And speaking of that, once they're done with the child, my suggestion for Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau is to move The Mandalorian more to that Western type of thing, and have the Mandalorian get back to his roots where he's doing more bounty hunting and stuff like that. I want to see more of that.
Totally.
100% agree.
Absolutely.
We've talked a little bit about this. It'd be great just to bring some of those classic bounty hunters back too, right? I mean, you could bring Forloom and Zuckish. You could bring Dengar. Right. We know quite a few famous actors have gone out there and said, "Hey, I want to play this character," right?
Yeah,
Sure. That would be, yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it'd be something that we really enjoy, because as much as we all love the child, unfortunately, it's not something I want to see more than 3 seasons.
Right.
I think that would be a good way of closing it, because I think we all agree that sometimes American television, Walking Dead, goes on forever, and it really at some point loses that feeling. So I think obviously, whether it ends this season or season 3, I think that, bringing what you just mentioned would do wonders and revive and keep it fresh.
It would.
You want to hit somewhere between Firefly and Walking Dead. in terms of number of seasons.
Well, I mean, you're generous and you want to give it 3 seasons. I don't want to give it 3 seasons. 2 seasons is enough.
Yeah. Now, Eric, before we jump into talking about t-shirts, do you want to plug any of your current projects, anything you have going on? I know we've had you talk about your music on the show before, but in case folks are just tuning in and they haven't heard those episodes, do you want to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're constantly, the thing we was just talking about, allforsci-fi.com. It's just a great multimedia website about everything sci-fi, and we're constantly doing videos as well and an unboxing of toys. In fact, I'm so far behind doing the unboxings. I still got to do the actual best car Mandalorian, which is already out.
Very nice.
I'm going to be opening and looking at of course, Zeb here. We're going to be unboxing Zeb, and we're going to be unboxing, the IG, the newer IG, the credit one. The IG, have you guys seen that lately? The new IG.
Yes. Yes, and they've got the silver border. It's the retro style or vintage collection IG 11 to add to your collection there. And most of what Eric has to unbox for Star Wars stuff is the Black Series figures, but every so often he gets those vintage style figures. So collectors like myself who love the more 70s and 80s vibe, I am so happy every time I see one of those silver bordered cards like that.
Yeah.
Because to me, that's what a Star Wars toy looks like, right?
That's true. That's nostalgia, and I won't ever open the stuff that George sent me. Of course, that's like
yes,
away.
Yeah,
nice.
Yes.
I'm wondering. I kind of want to open one of them, because what if it's one of those ones that's worth a lot of money?
Yeah. What if you have a vinyl Cape Jawa? You'd be set for life, right? Good
but
times.
I'm not going to take the chance. So.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Eric was directed by George Lucas himself in the Star Wars Ewok movies, The Caravan of Courage and Battle for Endor. That isn't often talked about in the official channels. But
isn't. But did you know that it's in a book? He talked about it in the new Star Wars archive book. I don't know.
I saw that because you won't be surprised to know, Eric, but since we've been able to connect over the podcast, I have a Google News alert for your name. So when things like that come popping up on the internet, I find all these things. Does that count as me stalking you? It's only
cyber stalking.
It's only cyber stalking, right? No.
You did steal social security or his credit card, so you're okay.
No, yeah, everything's fine there. Yeah, right. Yeah. No, but that way, when we have you on the show, which we are so honored and blessed to do on a regular basis now, I know what's happening and I can talk to you about it. See, it's all show prep. That's it. Show prep.
There you go. Yeah. No, but yeah, they finally did they're starting to in the official channels acknowledge it with that new Star Wars archives book, where there's a picture of George Lucas directing me in it.
Yes. I'm
cool.
so happy for you. I'm so happy for you. I hope that means that we might be one step closer to the documentary that you and Warwick Davis were talking about earlier this year.
Yeah, that's great.
And last year.
Although someone sent me a link to one that's on YouTube, and that guy's has my footage, part of my footage up there, and the guy never even contacted me. So it's like,
terrible.
What's that guy doing?
Yeah.
I'm not affiliated with that guy, although he did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Documentary he did, but and I'll just leave it alone for now. But if Disney takes it over, they'll probably make him take it down. So or Lucas.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can't get away from Disney's lawyers. That's a no-win scenario.
Wrong with the Force, they are.
Yes, they are.
No-win scenario. I see what you did there, Scott.
Thank you.
You're pulling Trek back into this.
I was so happy.
I will never complain about that, though.
No, we're all love Star Trek. I'm not a huge fan of Discovery, though. I am kind of excited waiting for that Pike spinoff.
I was so excited when I saw Eric doing All for Sci-Fi, because it's so great to see a Star Wars guy be a big Star Trek fan as well, because I come from an era when there used to be like a great divide and you weren't allowed to cross the streams.
True.
All right, let's talk about t-shirts, guys.
Yes.
Nathan, what Star Wars t-shirt are you wearing this week?
I'm wearing an oldie but a goodie. This is my green R2-D2 t-shirt with lots of scenes from the original trilogy and all the little different panels on R2-D2.
Very nice.
It's a very comfortable shirt.
I love comic books and I love Star Wars comic books, so your shirt merges the two in a wonderful way. You've got all those details there.
Derek, what shirt are you wearing today?
Well, I knew we were going to have Eric guest on the show today, and I know how much he loves the child, so I had to pull one of my child shirts out.
Oh, cute.
Oh, the chibi soup Yoda.
Chibi baby Yoda, or the child drinking his soup/tea, however you want to look at it. But one of these T-shirts that I have many, because the one that I had with the pocket chibi is being washed right now. So, all right, Eric, what shirt do you got on for Star Wars or cap?
Yes. Well, I have a cap on. This cap is from Galaxy's Edge.
Oh, cool. It's got the
Millennium. Yep. Got the Millennium Falcon. But I am wearing a Star Wars t-shirt as well.
Nice.
This is from Order 66 Toys, and this was on their anniversary of their live sales. Order 66 Toys is a group that I'm kind of affiliated with. They have a toy store. I don't know if you guys have heard of Order 66.
Yes.
Yeah, on your show. Yep.
Yeah. So this was during their anniversary of their second year of their sale, and it has all the different stormtroopers, the different types on there, a Sith one and a regular old fashioned one, and then this other one that looks a lot like Echo. So
yes, yeah. So cool collection of trooper helmets there on that shirt. Yeah, so that's awesome.
And I almost grabbed, and I didn't have enough time to do it, but I was gonna actually wear the Star Wars Celebration shirt, because Celebration didn't happen, but I have them.
That's true. So, yes.
Yeah. Nathan got one, didn't you, Nathan?
Yeah, I got the Empire Strikes Back 40th anniversary baseball tee because nice. I got the baseball tee in Chicago as well at the last celebration that actually happened. So I figured I'll just make it a tradition for all celebrations. I'll get a baseball tee.
Nice. All right, and this week I am wearing a shirt that's sort of a nod to our special guest in a roundabout way. This is my half and half logo circle, almost a yin yang of the Sith Empire and the Galactic Republic from Star Wars: The Old Republic massive multiplayer online game. And I got this speaking of Celebration Chicago, I got this at Celebration Chicago when the video game was celebrating the pending release of their expansion Onslaught, which is the most recent expansion for that MMO. But the reason that I have it on today is because after our last meeting with Eric Walker, I went on the game and created a virtual Mace Tawani, a what if you will, of what Mace would look like as an adult and a galactic hero, and gave him a updated version of his orange and white X-Wing pilot inspired flight suit and blaster rifle, and I even got an Ewok companion for him to follow him around on his adventures. And once I got him to Living Legend status, I took a cool screenshot of it and sent it to Eric, and he was all like, hey, thanks a lot. But then it sort of got lost in the shuffle. But then recently I saw that he had used it as his avatar temporarily anyway on Facebook. Looks great, man. You did a good job with setting up the shot, and
great job too. There you go.
Thank you. I am so honored that you're using something that I sent to you as your avatar.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And I remember when you sent it to me, I said something back to you, but I had forgotten about it. But I was scrolling through my Facebook feed. I think I was looking for something else. My wife wanted me to go find a picture of us somewhere, and I saw it. I go, wow, that'd be cool. So I threw it up there.
Yeah, excellent. So yeah, and actually I was playing as you, pretending to be you. I don't know how to say this. I was using my Mace Tawani toy earlier virtually to go do some adventures on.
Well, Mace is like a cross between. He's kind of got the attitude of Han Solo, but looks a little bit more like Luke. So
yeah, and that's
maybe Mace could have been the love child from the very first one and not the other ones that came aboard.
Right, yes. Oh man, a sequel trilogy with the continuing adventures of Mace Tawani. I'd watch it. Anyway, but yeah, I play him that way in the MMO. He is shoot first, ask questions later, much like Han. But every time he is given a choice between dark side and light side, I always pick the light side instance. So you'll be pleased to know that somewhere out there, you have a huge amount of positive energy as light side swells through Mace Tawani.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, he is a light side kind of guy, even though he's a jerk.
Yeah. He means well, although he doesn't always accomplish it, right?
Well, yeah. a teen, he was a teenager at that time, and when you think you know everything, right? So
exactly.
The rebellious teen.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna go grab a drink at the bar real quick.
Well, before you do, don't forget to head on over to TeePublic, guys, so you can help support the channel a little bit. Search for the What a Piece of Junk podcast t-shirts. You can get other cool apparel like mugs and all that stuff, but TeePublic. And then we also have geekypockets.com, which is a friend of ours, right? You were saying, Scott?
Absolutely. Terry Lee, a friend of the show, makes Star Wars related t-shirts and other geeky t-shirts that have a cool breast pocket on them. So geekypockettees.com, you can go and support Terry's work, find some cool Star Wars stuff, or if you're into more like Harry Potter or comic books or that type of thing, she also has plenty of pocket tees for that particular type of geek as well.
All right. All right, now Scott's heading over to the bar there. I'm just drinking just some water. But Scott, what specialty drink you got this week?
Yeah, so I usually try to be a little more craft soda. This week, I'm a little more corporate than usual, but it's still obscure. It is a Royal Crown soda, which is a big thing here in North Carolina and South Carolina.
You could just call it RC. Everybody knows that.
I could, yes. But this is a very special and somewhat hard to find version of RC. It is cherry RC. So it's a little bit like cherry Coke, but a little closer to wild cherry Pepsi, if anybody drinks wild cherry Pepsi. So it's delicious, though.
All right. Well, what's
Now,
Scuttlebutt news? Oh, go ahead, Nathan.
But I have to ask on behalf of our friends at Rolling Dice and Taking Names, do you have a moon pie?
I don't have a moon pie. I have. There is a great disturbance in the force because I have an RC, but I don't have a moon pie. What am I doing with my life? Anyway.
All right. Well, I guess we can move on then.
Yeah. All right, cool. So, Derek, what kind of Star Wars news or rumors have you got for us this week before we jump into Mandalorian discussion?
Yeah, so surfing the intranets of the Star Wars world and the underworld, came across a little bit of cool Star Wars cameo news, and that was in regards to some folks out there that like to play the Star Wars video games. Obviously know that the Battlefront 2 that came out a few years ago, the first-person shooter, very successful on all the platforms, but they might remember that the main storyline, who's actually become quite a big character in the Star Wars universe when it comes to kind of that middle in between OG and sequel era, Iden Verso, the actress who portrayed her in the video game, Janina Gavankar, who was it was portrayed on her. And they also might know her. She played a couple of characters on True Blood, also on the show The Way Back and The Morning Show. And again, as she portrayed the character Iden Verso, she actually makes another cameo in this most recent episode of The Mandalorian that we'll talk a little bit here. She actually got to puppeteer one of the nostrils to Mon Calamari. And I love this little snippet that they took from her when they asked her to come back. That was, I guess, Frank Ippolito, who's part of the puppeteering and all that stuff and the animation for it. And I guess he called her up and he said, "Do you want to come puppeteer the nostrils of this Mon Calamari?" And she goes, and I said, blank, yes.
I don't know about you guys, but before I read this article, I didn't realize that Mon Calamari had a puppeteer separate just for nostrils. I mean, what? This is, boy, talk about attention to detail.
Yeah, I've always known that that several of the aliens did take more than one person. Jabba famously took several people to control. People controlling
something
the tail.
like 6 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But I would not have expected so many for such a humanoid species as Mon Calamari.
And for a background character too.
Yeah. Now, Eric, obviously you've had more experience with being on set with Star Wars puppets than anybody else that we know. Do you recall this kind of attention to detail back in the day?
Oh, they were the attention to detail on everything. One of the things that when in the making of the Ewok movie, which who knows if they'll ever get it, we actually interview the lady who did all the costume stuff for the Ewoks, and she actually breaks down the Ewok species and how they have only three fingers, so everything has to be made with the thought of, can someone that has a species that has 3 fingers, can they tie the rope this way, even down to the every little detail, but the stuff they wear, to the ropes that they have, to their hoods to everything is very, very. They actually take a lot of time to think about what that species would with the stuff that they could have, like I've just mentioned, how they tie a knot on a rope, even that type of thing. So they're very, very detailed.
Yeah, and now I know I've asked you questions about Ewok hang gliders before because as a child I was fascinated by Ewok hang gliders. But when you're talking about the ropes tying and the particular craftsmanship for the three-fingered society, did they take that into account with the design and the shooting of the hang gliders as well? Because I know there's a part of y'all's first movie where the hang gliders are a really important section.
Right at the very beginning, where he goes to look for his children that are lost and didn't come back home, Whittle and Weechee.
Yeah,
Which the original character Weechee was called Wally, I think, or Wooly or something like that. They changed the name, but yeah, they very much so, and they used a real hang glider. They actually went out to and talked with a gentleman who does hang gliding and asked, "Is it possible to do this?" Because they just thought, no, I don't think he's going to say we could do it, so we're going to have to figure out a way to fake it. Post.
Right.
Found out, no, he said yes. He was willing to do it, which is kind of cool. So that's why you have those real shots of a real hang glider in the Ewok movie. So that was great.
Yeah, as a
Ewok
child,
holiday movie, which is the original name of it. So.
Yeah, as a child, I had recorded it on VHS off of television, and I watched that part until the tape broke, the part with the hang gliding, because I just thought it was so cool.
It was very cool.
All right, great. Well, now normally we dive into a little more Star Wars news, but this week, since we have a special guest to talk about The Mandalorian, we're going to go ahead and jump right on into it, folks. Derek, I assume that was the most pressing story we had.
Yeah, we've got a couple other things. I mean, I don't know. Eric, is there anything over in the past month or two that any news or rumors that struck you up in the Star Wars world that you might have covered in All for Sci-Fi?
I know that they're deep into filming the Obi-Wan Kenobi series.
Mm-hmm.
So they've begun work on that. They started that. I think they started that in August, if I remember correctly. So they're far into it.
I saw a rumor earlier today from a fellow Fandom Podcast Network podcaster, Adam O'Brien, had posted a link to where Diego Luna announced that they were beginning filming for Cassian Andor's series. So that'll be
okay. I can't wait to see that too.
Yeah, I love that character. I think he's got a rich backstory, and I can't wait to see them expand upon it.
Yeah, no, Rogue One is definitely one of my most favorite Disney era of all the movies that they've done.
Well, speaking of that, then Eric, last episode we talked about that Felicity Jones came out saying that she thinks the Jyn Erso story isn't complete. I mean, obviously, we know what happens to her, right? But the beginning portion of her life, did you see that article? And if not, what are your thoughts about Jyn Erso with more with her too?
Oh wow, that would be. I mean, it just ties into the other series as well. So they could. Why can't they? Well, actually, was that the first time they met? Was in Rogue One, so maybe they can't.
Yes, that was the first time that she met. She met Cassian, but obviously, like we talked about.
Obviously, look at what look at what Jyn went through.
Yeah,
not having her parents and seeing them, taken away and stuff. Yeah. So there should be a huge story for her because it jumped really far.
And she had to get in trouble for something to have been arrested because the first time we see her, she's in custody,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I would love to see a younger version of Jyn Erso story. That would be great. That'd be a great thing to explore.
Yeah. And we talked about, it'd be a great way of tying in possibly Forrest Whitaker again with Saw Gerrera.
Yes.
And doing, obviously digital makeup and what they do with all that CGI stuff, they can make anyone look like in their 20s again. So
sure they can, but he would even be better probably for the Cassian series because he might be better for like a protagonist back and forth between those two. So they should bring him back for that one for sure as well.
I could see them using Saw Gerrera as kind of a tie-in character to tie if they did make a Jyn Erso show and the Cassian show to tie the two together.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So are you listening, Disney? No.
Right.
That's what we keep saying. Call us up.
Yeah, we have ideas. Right. Good times.
But no, excellent. So well, before we jump into the Mando, and to listen to what Eric has to talk about, what he's been thinking about so far, season 2, why don't we listen to Kevin and see what else is going on the Fandom Podcast Network?
All right.
Hi, this is Dominic Pace, who plays Gecko the Bounty Hunter from The Mandalorian. and you are listening to What a Piece of Junk Podcast.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We'd like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to our other awesome shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, our weekly pop culture podcast. Couch Potato Theater, our podcast celebrating our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a whole year in movies. The End Zone, our NFL podcast. Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast. The Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville podcast. Hair Metal, the 1980s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our Doctor Who podcast. Lethal Mullet, a 1980s action film podcast. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast. And our newest show, Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast. A deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. You can enjoy all of these great Fandom Podcast Network shows on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. The FPNet can also be found on the Podbean app. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on Apple Podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, and now iHeartRadio. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook. You can also email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find the Fandom Podcast Network on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
Hi, this is Delilah S. Dawson and her current cold virus, and you are listening to What a Piece of Junk podcast.
Cool, great. Thank you so much, Kevin, for keeping us apprised on the other shows here on the Fandom Podcast Network. And so let's talk a little Star Wars The Mandalorian, guys. Now, Derek and Nathan, we've talked about chapters 9 and 10 on previous episodes. Eric, I know that you've discussed chapters 9 and 10 on All for Sci-Fi, but did you have any particular observations you wanted to share with our audience about the previous two chapters?
Well, I mean, yeah, I did discuss it already, but I just, I like the direction it's going this year. In fact, this last episode, which we're going to get into, is my favorite episode so far this season, of course.
Me too.
But yeah, I it was neat to see that they immediately, I like the fact that the show's using some of the characters that they had in the previous year. I like the fact that he went to, suddenly he's there in this city, and then the person who was played by John Leguizamo, that character, which kind of shocked me that he played the character.
Yeah.
He did a great job, by the way, because I'm used to seeing him totally different.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that he got sent to Tatooine, and that there's another. And I liked how they brought in the whole everybody wanted to know what happened to Boba Fett, and we've been talking about how we know he survived the Sarlacc pit. And what's going on with the fact that he doesn't have his armor? Why did he get out of the Sarlacc pit and he was so hurt that he got knocked out, and the Jawas came while he was sleeping and stole it? What happened? So I'm kind of curious how they're going to tie that together, and are they going to bring Boba Fett back into it later? And then is Din Djarin going to give Boba Fett his outfit back, or does he not care about that because they're now introducing the fact in this latest episode that Din's way is the old way? So I don't know. I really liked the first episode. I think it was a great start for the season. And again, I like the fact they're bringing characters back, like I mentioned earlier, like the lady the hanger lady.
Amy Sedaris, yeah, she's hilarious.
I love Amy. She does stand up, and she's perfect for the role. So people should go watch her stand up online. So
yeah, she's hysterical in that as well.
Yes. So I like that. I like that. And like I said, I like the fact they're reusing that stuff. And I like the phrases. I really, really like the writing of the show and the phrases that we could all, like last season, we had "This is the way" and "I have spoken." And now we have "Thank the Force," this year. Remember
Yes.
that?
Yes.
And we're starting to get catchphrases again. So I like the fact that they're doing that. And the writing. Oh, who knew Jon Favreau could write this good?
Yeah, it's amazing. His work in the Marvel movies has always been great, and I really enjoyed his film Chef. Those of you listening, if you haven't watched Chef with Jon Favreau, go check it out. It's a great story, contemporary Earth story about a food truck being run by a formerly gourmet chef. Really fun movie. But Eric, I would be remiss. My kids actually mentioned this to me. They said, "Hey, Dad," and my wife too. She's like, "Scott, remember, if you get to talk to Eric Walker tonight, ask him what he thought about fighting giant spiders in a Star Wars show." And I'm like, "So yeah, I think Eric probably has a few thoughts about fighting giant spiders in a galaxy far, far away." So as someone who had to fight giant spiders, what did you think about the giant spider part of Chapter 10?
Well, they're they're a lot more. They're way scarier than they were back in my day.
Yeah. Were you sitting there thinking, "Oh, I could have done that too if I had a flamethrower"? Come on, that's cheating, right?
I like that. I really like that. That episode, had you like cringing. They had so many cringe-worthy moments. It was like I was watching Star Wars, the horror film version of it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Now,
yeah,
Nick,
it was very cringe-worthy. But the child too is the kid is because they're calling him the kid sometimes too. But the kid is starting to show more of his personality, and you can tell the kid's getting older by the way he's interacting more, and he's kind of doing stuff more, and he's very mischievous, and and he just likes to eat everything,
Yes.
Always hungry. He's going through a growth spurt.
Including space spiders. The child has now eaten space spiders. That was amazing.
Gross when he ate that spider, but which I guess the other spiders but it was cracking me up when he was like rolling down the hill, like trying to speak as loud as he could to warn his dad that
Yes.
what's going on type of thing. It was like,
The spiders are coming. The spiders are coming.
Great stuff.
Yeah, and then before we also break into that, what do you think so far the first few episodes about the music?
That's a thing that, as you know, I know because I'm a composer.
Mm-hmm.
Music that Ludwig, and I cannot say this enough, Ludwig, you are our generation's John Williams.
Yeah.
You are that good. And I don't say that to give you a big head and a big ego, but you are that good. The way the little nuances in the themes and how he keeps bringing it back and tying it in, like John Williams, of course, did with the original Star Wars. I'm wondering if he studied and paid attention. I've heard him say something in an interview briefly about how he's going to bring it back, some of the different themes again. But I've noticed in this last episode, there were a couple themes for a couple of the characters that I'm not going to say it yet until we discuss it. But there's a couple themes in this last episode, like even with the frog lady and her husband, and had this kind of romantic interlude type of thing too. And then the other characters, which we'll talk about in a minute. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say. So.
Oh, you're good.
Oh yeah, we're gonna kick all the spoilers off.
All spoilers off. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Obviously, the other Mandalorians, Bo Katan and all of them, their theme every time they came in, they had their own musical theme, which happened again every single time. Even when they saved Din a second time and the child a second time, as they're firing, he did the same theme real quick. Dun,
Yes.
dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Yes, it was like the music. Oh, I can't. There is not. You'll never find. I don't think anybody. I don't think that there's been a time where music has been this good for a television show that I could think of in memory, except for maybe like when they did Caravan of Courage, but that was a movie.
Right.
The TV show.
Not for live action, but for some animes, I will say there are some phenomenal soundtracks out there.
There you go.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's true. There's been some out there that I've seen, even back when in the Star Wars stuff, staying in the same genre and field. Yeah, there was stuff I saw in the Clone Wars and Rebels, which were good as well.
Oh, season 7 Clone Wars, what they were doing there on the Siege of Mandalore and all that stuff that we talked about earlier this year when we were covering it. Oh, some of the parts that we talked about, even just the silence. I remember when Nathan talked about the silence portion and how much that meant to him in that Clone Wars
Yeah, so I mean, the music and not going off topic since we're on Star Wars, but Star Trek, Jeff Russo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! But the music, Ludwig, you were doing a great job. It's great. I'm so happy that they found you and brought you, and they're letting you do what you need to do, which is great. And that's always the good sign of a good producer, executive producer like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are, that they let him explore. And that's great. They let him. The Caravan of Courage had great music as well. That was done by Peter. I think it was Peter Bernstein did that.
Mm-hmm.
That good as well.
Yeah, totally. All right, great. Well, let's head on into chapter 11 then. And Eric, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts on chapters 9 and 10. That's really cool to get that perspective from someone who's been a lot closer to this kind of production than we have. So chapter 11, The Heiress, to me, this was, almost a sea change in the nature of the story that we are being told here in The Mandalorian. Nathan, when you saw the title, The Heiress, did that make you start to sort of perk up your Clone Wars radar for any particular characters that Dave Filoni is well known for that are, of the female persuasion, since obviously it was the heiress, not the heir, as the title of chapter 11?
Yeah, my first thought was, we had seen Sasha Banks,
Mm-hmm.
or Mercedes. I can't pronounce her last name.
Mercedes Vernado.
Mercedes Vernado. We had seen her in some of the promotional material in the trailer and whatnot. We had speculated that she might be Sabine. And not just us.
We get that wrong, didn't everybody?
Yeah, we did.
Well, we were somewhat close. We were somewhat close.
Well, and we did say on this program that we thought it might be Sabine, but that we also thought it might be a whole new character. So we were half right.
Right. Yes. We're gonna take that 50% and be happy with it.
Yeah. At least we're not at zero like the Zero guy.
Yes. We don't talk about Mike Zero on the show, Eric. We just
Sorry, brought him up.
Yeah, but I was particularly watching out for her character, given the title of the episode, The Heiress. But it turned out to not be her.
No, and I gotta admit, I had this sneaking suspicion that Bo Katan would show up in this season of The Mandalorian, because last year, or a little bit earlier than this point in time last year, we had a very mysterious tweet from Katie Sackhoff saying that on that day, she had got to check off a bucket list item and something that she would never forget for her whole life. And I thought to myself, and said on an earlier episode of What a Piece of Junk here, that could mean that she got to either play Bo Katan in real life, or Bo Katan was in an episode of The Mandalorian and Katie Sackhoff got to record the lines, like to overdub if she never takes off her helmet, because back then in season 1, we were all under the impression that modern Mandalorians, contemporary Mandalorians, post Return of the Jedi, never took off their helmets because this is the way. Right?
Correct,
oh man, this chapter just blew the lid off of Mandalorian society, if you'll pardon the helmet pun. But yeah, when I saw the title, The Heiress, I started keeping an eye out for either someone like Sabine or Bo Katan.
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, I recognized her helmet the second I saw her.
Oh yeah, Death Watch.
Yeah.
You just knew immediately it was Bo Katan.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. So we start out this episode picking up pretty much a few minutes, or in this case, probably a few hours after the end of chapter 10. The Razor Crest is limping along through space, trying to make it to the planet Trask in one piece at sublight speed, because the frog lady's eggs won't survive at hyperspace. I love that biological.
I'm not sure the Razor Crest would.
At that point in time, neither would the Razor Crest. Right? It'll fly it apart.
What a piece of junk.
What a piece of junk. Yes, thank you very much. I have to edit out that sound clip. All right, so so the Razor Crest makes it into the orbit of Trask, and we have our first moment of crisis for our hero, and that is, will this hunk of junk survive re-entry? It just barely makes it into the planetary atmosphere, down to normal levels of atmosphere, and running so low on fuel. The coaxium is like way down. It's the needle's past the E, on the fuel gauge, that he's got to save every last drop till right at the last second. He's going to turn on the afterburners and land the Razor Crest on the landing platform there at the little harbor area. And he's breaking all kinds of local ordinances about speed. The lady is on the flight control yelling at him the whole time. Razor Crest, you've got to reduce speed. Razor Crest, you are coming in way too fast. And right at the last second, he hits the afterburners and Din says, nice and easy. Doop, doop. Boom! The whole thing fades over to the right side, crashes into the ocean. When we were watching that, my wife laughed so hard she was almost falling off the couch. She was like, that was great.
And the Mon Calamari just watching him was just like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
You could tell it was just like, not again.
Yes.
This happens every other week out here.
But what I liked is what's probably going to be the next hottest toy, the thing that looked like a walker modified that picked it up out of the water.
Yes, totally. Mita said to me, I guess this happens often because they have that modified AT-AT crane to pick it up. And I said, well, what if that crane's main job is to pick up cargo, but they have it just in case somebody slides off the platform into the ocean?
Now, what's really interesting to me about that, the AT-AT or AT-AT chassis being used in that way, is that the inspiration for the original AT-ATs was cranes that lifted cargo off of ships.
Yep.
That had 4 big legs and a crane on top of it. So it's kind of come full circle that, it was inspired. The AT-AT was inspired by a crane, and now the AT-AT is inspiring a crane.
Yep. That is definitely an inspiration nod from Dave Filoni, I'm sure, because Dave, as we all know, loves to put in little nods to Ralph McQuarrie and all the other originators of Star Wars design.
And speaking of inspiration nods, Scott, do you know who directed this episode?
Bryce Dallas Howard directed this episode, daughter of Ron Howard, legendary Opie from, and the Andy Griffith Show. And of course, Richie Cunningham on Happy Days. And of course,
and director of Solo.
And director of Solo. Yes. I was just going to sort of build up on the resume there, but yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And director of Apollo 13.
Oh yes, that's right. Yes. Ron Howard's just a great director in Hollywood.
Of course, Willow. We can't forget Willow.
Yes. Maybe we better stop with the resume, or we'll never end.
Well, yes, because we need to backtrack to Apollo 13, because if you watch side by side the Razor Crest's landing, we'll charitably call it, and the Apollo 13 landing from that movie, there's a lot of similarities, shot for shot, with those 2 ships getting down to the surface.
Wow.
And Bryce Dallas Howard has actually come out and said that yes, this sequence is an homage to my father.
Wow, that's awesome.
Great.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, anyway, so then Din exits the ship once they finally get it out of the water, and gives the Mon Calamari that has been watching him with flippers on hips, gives him 1,000 credits to try and get the Razor Crest back into good condition. And
I'll see what I can do.
It'll fly.
If it carry fuel.
Yeah, he's like, I'll fuel it up if it will still hold fuel. Good times. Yeah. I love that.
I actually met Ron Howard when we were doing the Ewok movie. He was doing Cocoon. I don't know if I said that in your show before.
No, I don't think you did. That's amazing, because I also love Cocoon. Such a great film.
Yeah, they were doing he was at ILM to do test shots for the aliens, and I went over to meet him, and I have a picture. Maybe I'll post it of us meeting each other. And he said he knew who I was and said, "I heard you're doing a great job." And I was freaking out after I met him.
No kidding.
Because this is the Happy Days dude.
Yeah, at that time he was one of the biggest television stars in the world. So yeah, that's amazing.
That's awesome.
He was very nice to me, which was cool.
Great. Well, now that I know that Mon Calamari, the repairman, had part of his puppeteering done by Iden Versio, I find this character even more hilarious. I love that he's just standing there going, I'll do what I can. So we move on, and we see Frog Lady frantically searching and trilling, calling out for her mate. And then she sees him across the way, and we get a From Here to Eternity style lovers running to embrace each other.
Now I have to ask Nathan, when she was croaking, did you get chills down your spine?
Are you asking me that because it was Dee Bradley Baker who was doing the voice? I did actually know that from last episode. Dee Bradley voiced her in the previous episode as well. So he's showing off his creature voice there.
I'm going to refrain from any sort of chills down Nathan's spine with regard to a frog. You guys are embarrassing me in front of the Mace Tawani. Come on, jeez. Oh my God. Anyway, but seriously, it was, I've seen some people on Twitter talking about how this was a very emotional scene for them because they were so happy that the frog mom and frog dad got back together. I mean, I'm happy for them. For me, this fell a little flat. I don't know. Did you guys get emotional about it, or was it more okay? They're frogs, yay?
He gets paid at this point, and hopefully, I mean, we know that the connection was going to be that the husband of the frog lady was the one that had the information, so we knew that was going to be the tie-in at that point.
Yeah. Eric, were you emotionally invested in frog coupledom?
The music helped. That's where I said they had their own little frog theme.
Yes.
It was really nice little interlude he did for them. And of course, he is connected to us because we want to find out what's going to happen. Where does he know? Is he going to help Din right away? Find some other Mandalorians, which we find out it was just he kind of just passed it off. Go talk to someone in a tavern type of thing. Yeah,
it's almost like the frog dad had heard other people at the bar talking about Mandalorians. And Correct. So then he was all like, I know where some are. Yeah, that's it. Bring me my wife and I'll tell you, So he points them off to the tavern, and we get an almost Dungeons and Dragons-esque, all good adventures start at a tavern. And he Din wanders off over there to the tavern and meets up with another Mon Calamari bartender and sits down along with the child and basically says, we're going to have you order some chowder for the kid, but I'm not gonna order anything. And the Mon Calamari bartender, in classic Western bartender style, is all like, "Hey, these seats are valuable. If you're going to be in here, you need to be ordering something." And he's like,
It's a trap."
Yes, and it was.
Didn't he?
It was.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
So they probably on purpose. They probably on purpose made that guy's voice sound the same because it was a trap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but I'm not sure if that Mon Calamari was in on the trap.
I don't know. It strikes me as he's the kind of guy who would be in on it.
Yeah. Well, you have to think about it that we later find out. I mean, yes, we're getting a little bit ahead here, but the Mandalorians, again, are infamous on this planet because they're the ones continually doing the attacks. So that's probably where the frog guy's hearing this information, right? Oh, I know where Mandalorians are at. They're on here attacking all the planet.
Yeah, they keep blowing stuff up, right?
So and at this point, when he comes in and they're doing it, they're all in it together because they know, hey, we're gonna get his armor because he's got Beskar, so it's worth a ton. And then they don't know he's probably any different than the other Mandalorians, so they're thinking, okay, we're just gonna get rid of the problem.
Yeah, totally. I think the bartender Mon Calamari knows it's a trap and is in on it because I watched it the third time that I watched this episode. I had the subtitles on, so I heard or read him telling the Quarren guys that there's a guy here asking about Mandalorians and he's wearing Beskar. He makes sure to tell the Quarren brothers that Din Djarin is wearing real Beskar.
He does, I remember.
And so I think that's almost him telling the Quarren guys, hey, this will be worth a lot of money. Give me my kickback because I'll help you get connected with this Mandalorian and you can take him out there and kill him.
See, that's the problem. I only watched it twice, not 3 times.
There's your problem.
The third time I would have noticed.
Yep. but yeah, so I think he's in on it. He gives the bowl of chowder to the child, and I loved that the chowder comes out of a like pipe network. Like we make so much chowder, we basically put a pipe into the ocean, suck up something, boil it, and then spray it back out into your bowl.
And apparently, don't boil it real well because it's still moving.
Yeah, we get an epic,
fresh.
We get an epic scene here, Eric, of the child leaning over with a spoon, and then that thing jumps on his face. Did you get any alien flashbacks? Because I know you're an '80s guy like I am.
Oh yeah, I thought that Ripley was gonna show up any minute. No.
or John Hurt be like, "Don't swallow it; it'll end badly."
Well, we kind of got that vibe in the last chapter, right? But it never finished off with the eggs, right?
With the spider eggs opening.
Yeah,
like this.
So I figured that. So now they just completed it here with the next part, so that way it was broken up, and they could say they didn't steal it from aliens.
Right? Yeah, totally. Now, I loved the way that Din leans over to Baby Yoda and is all, "Don't play with your food." And he takes out the vibro knife, doesn't even cut the little octopus thing. He just turns on the vib blade long enough to stun it so that it'll fall off of the child's face. And it falls back into the soup, and the child is all like, "Ooh, now I can eat it."
I did love the implication there that the child was just playing with the food. This thing's trying to eat the child's face, but hey, stop playing with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the Quarren guy sits down and is, I'm sorry, the most stock country accent character in the bar in the Western that I have seen in quite some time, when he's all like, "So, heard you're looking for some more Mandalorians," and just does the, I don't know, maybe we're supposed to get the feeling that Din should have realized this was a trap when that guy was all like, yeah, I can take you. It's only about a day's sail away. And
it's gonna cost you.
Yeah, yes. I'm amazed that we have a Quarren able to speak basic, looking at that mouth that Quarrens have. Like, how does he make those sounds with that beaky face thing?
I was not amazed by that at all, because if you watched Resistance, there is a Quarren pirate who is a main character.
Yeah, it was amazing to me in that episode too.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not amazing to me anymore. I was surprised when I saw it in Resistance, but by the time I saw this episode, I knew that Quarrens could speak basic. What really surprised me, though, was seeing Mon Calamari and Quarren together and not fighting each other.
Yeah, because normally these two species in the Star Wars galaxy, they hate each other. They're almost like light side, dark side counterparts for each other when it comes to aquatic worlds. But I guess,
as a matter of fact, they both come from the same planet, Mon Cala, and in the Clone Wars, they actually had a civil war, Mon Calamari versus Quarren. So I guess by this point, those tensions are a little bit eased. Plus, they're not on their home world, so that might facilitate some mixing of the species there.
Or, of course, needs must, as they say. And here in the post-Empire world, maybe they've had to put their differences aside to survive out here on Trask. Because it doesn't look like it's that big of a happening place on Trask.
I don't know. With these two species, maybe most of the happening is underwater.
That's true. Yeah.
So all we need is some Gungans to take place too,
right?
If we were going to get Gungans, this probably would have been the planet for it.
Well, they're still on the planet, so who knows?
I wonder though, because Din's always talking about making sure he has enough fuel in the Razor Crest, and of course the new Republic is talking about how times are tough and resources are stretched thin when we meet up with Trapper Wolf and Carson last episode. Perhaps it's a situation where coaxium and other fuels and stuff like that are now becoming so much more difficult to come by because there's not a big, network of supplies and whatnot, that people don't travel that far from their home systems much these days. And so that's why maybe the Quarren and the Mon Cal have to get along, because they don't get that many visitors out there. And maybe that's why, Nathan, we didn't see any Gungas, even though they would have been right at home on this aquatic world. They just don't have the resources to travel over here to Trask, because, Naboo and Tatooine are relatively far apart. But
Are you implying that there was some sort of major event in which a lot of the fuel in the galaxy was burned up?
No,
Some sort of
wrong
burn?
show. Wrong show.
Sorry.
I'm just saying that nowadays in the Star Wars galaxy, post Return of the Jedi like this, finding fuel might be a little more problematic than it is during the Empire era, you know.
Yeah, we have heard more than once that these are trying times.
Yeah. But Din decides that he can trust this Quarren guy. I guess more so that because he's desperate to find more Mandalorians because he has no idea how to take the child back to the Jedi. And so next shot, we are steaming across the face of the sea on a cool Star Wars ship. Now, guys, is this the first time? No, this would be the second time that we've seen a Star Wars adventure happen on the water. Is that right? Because the first time being on Kef Bir in The Rise of Skywalker. We saw Rey take a boat out across the water to the wreckage of Death Star 2. I'm trying to think, the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy, did we see water surface stuff? I know we saw
Phantom Menace when they.
Well, that was more of all submarine stuff, right?
Well, but then I mean, I guess if you were going to say, because when they pop out from underneath the core in the city of Naboo, then they got the where they're floating down before they have to jump off, and then I'm trying to think. I mean, there's a portion in the Attack of the Clones.
Didn't they have a scene where they were getting married, or they were in a boat or something like that?
In the prequels?
Yeah, when
Attack of the Clones. Yeah.
They were on like a balcony overlooking
the
water.
balcony. Okay, that's right. They weren't on a boat. Okay.
Yeah, and then I guess there's a split-second shot on Canto Bight in The Last Jedi that we see when we're approaching. We see that yacht sailing across the river, and then it gets to the waterfall, and it just keeps on going as it flies off the side of the waterfall. But like this was the first time I could really think of like almost Star Wars aquatic piratey dudes with the Quarren guys running the deck and holding their gaffy hooks, not gaffy sticks, but gaffy hooks. The big staffs that these Quarren guys had that are traditional, old school, actual real world sailing tools. I think this is the first time we've seen like aliens on Star Wars walking across the surface of the deck of a ship that's sailing across the surface. Speaking of sails, Nathan, do you have any info about how that ship had a quote unquote sail? Was that some sort of gravity sail or solar sail?
I don't have any info on that directly, but I did see a comparison of that ship to the Hammerhead ships that were used in Rogue One to push the Star Destroyers into each other. Now, it's not really clear to me. It looks like the Hammerhead ships that we saw in Rogue One were bigger.
Yes, sure.
It's hard to tell scale in outer frickin' space.
Yes.
But if it was a modified version of one of those Hammerhead ships, then it would make sense that it would use some of the same technology. We've got repulsor lift technology. Why would we not just apply that to the sails as well?
Yeah, and of course, the back of the vessel that Din and the child are sailing on, you can see it has glowing engine nozzles, and it's kind of like, pushing it through the water. I guess maybe when the Quarren guy said it's only a couple hours sail from here, he was speaking perhaps metaphorically.
Seems likely.
Yeah. But so then we zoom down to the surface of the water, and we see on deck, Din and the child are leaning up against the railing there, and they're looking out over the ocean on Trask. And one of the Quarren brothers comes up behind him and talks about how they're getting ready to start feeding the Mama Core. I don't know what a Mama Core is. Had you guys heard of this before this episode?
No.
I think so. We have another new Star Wars creature, a Mama Core, which looked kind of like some sort of almost like an aquatic version of a Sarlacc monster with the big mouth there. And he basically lures Yeah, you see what I did there? He lures Din and the child over next to the pit where the mama core is, so that as he's calmly describing what they're feeding all the fish to, he can quickly take that staff and ram the child's pram into the mouth of the mama core. And Eric, I don't know about you, but I was panicking when I saw that the child had been thrown out over the giant toothy maw of the mama core.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought that the child was done for, but then I thought, would it have been cool if the child used the Force somehow?
Yes.
I was waiting for that to happen, but instead we got the Mandalorians coming to the rescue. You know?
Yes, and also we saw the child had the presence of mind to push the little quick close the doors button on the pram.
Right. Yeah, no, just like in the prior scene when his daddy was going to kick some butt, you know, he knew he needed to close it. So.
Yeah. Derek.
Well, and not just that. This is also the next scene. Again, we get to see where Din Djarin just gets his butt handed to him, and if it wasn't for the Beskar, he would have gotten beat up.
Yes, he would have. He dives
loses continuously.
Yes, he dives into the water to try to save the child, and I guess blow open the mama core. But of course, they quickly close the gate on top of him. And I had a little Return of the Jedi flashback to see the Jedi, as they all point toward Din getting ready to fight the big monster, and the trap door closes on top of him. Nathan, did you think about Return of the Jedi at this moment?
I did think about Return of the Jedi, but not the Rancor. As you mentioned, the Mama Core brought back flashbacks of the Sarlacc, specifically the not special edition one without the beak, where it's just all
just a big open hole with teeth everywhere. Yeah.
So I got flashbacks to that. Not so much to the Rancor, because of all the water. There wasn't a lot of water in Jabba's palace there.
True. I was more thinking about trapdoorness, you know.
But I did notice that his jetpack seems to work underwater.
Oh, that's true. Because the first time that they close the trap door, the main Quarren says, "Oh man, he didn't drown," because we see the big glow, bloop, and big bubbles of Din firing up the rising phoenix there, so he can fly back up and grab onto the trap door, the cage top, so that he won't drown. But it is interesting to note, I had always thought that you could push a button on a proper suit of Beskar Mandalorian armor, and you could seal off your helmet so that you could use it in outer space. But either he didn't think about that, or Din's doesn't have that, or I'm just wrong, and you can't do that.
I don't know of a time that we've seen that. Probably the closest time we've seen a person in Beskar armor with water like this was actually Attack of the Clones with Jango Fett fighting Obi-Wan, but they never fell into the water.
Yeah, so maybe the reason I thought that you could seal them off is because the Mandalorian commandos and Sabine Wren on Rebels, they run around on the surface of some of the Imperial Star Destroyers in space alongside Ezra Bridger in Rebels. But we see clearly Ezra has on his old school classic almost 1950s fishbowl helmet out there so he can breathe in space. But I thought that Sabine and crew didn't need those because they could just push a button and have their Mandalorian helmets work in space. But maybe you have to, like, you know, fit it with seals and stuff to get ready for breathing apparatus. Or
maybe it's an upgrade that he doesn't have.
Yeah, because we keep seeing Din is adding more pieces to his armor, including...
He hasn't reached level 8 yet.
He hasn't reached level 8. Yes, he needs to go do some more missions in Star Wars The Old Republic MMO, gain enough XP so he could be high level like Mace Windu. But yeah, so yeah, he almost drowns, basically, and the Quarren guy is like, "Oh, he didn't drown?" And then he channels his inner Shao Kahn from Mortal Kombat and says, "Finish him!" Stab, stab, stab.
And then all the glory happens when they show up.
Yes. Bo Katan, Kuska Reeves, and Axe. What is Axe's
Wolves.
name? Wolves.
Wolves.
Yes, Bo Katan.
Not wolves, but wolves.
Yes.
Yeah, at first I thought this is a Dave Filoni named character right here, Axe Wolves.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but no, his name is Axe Wolves, because I guess wolves would be too on the nose, right? But yeah, so as soon as the first Mandalorian dropped out of the sky, kicked that Quarren guy in the head and then shot him point blank with her pistol. I knew, like Eric said, I recognized her helmet, so I knew that was Bo Katan. And then when the other Mandalorian dropped out of the sky, I was still thinking there's a possibility that this is Sabine. But when I saw her shoulder pads and her chest plate, I'm like, no, that's not Sabine. That armor's way too plain. Because Eric, she'd be multicolored and painted it all, right? Wouldn't she?
Yeah, no, Sabine, no, that she didn't have any of the right colors.
Yeah. So Nathan, did you know that it was going to be Sasha Banks before she took the helmet off? Because I could sort of tell from the way she was moving.
Well, at this point, I figured they're not going to introduce these 3 Mandalorians and then also introduce Sasha Banks's other character later in the episode. So it's more of a story structure thing, but I did realize that one of them would be Sasha Banks.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Marsh, you're not as big of a pro wrestling fan as Nathan and I. Did you recognize Sasha's moves in the armor, or were you surprised when it turned out to be her?
No, I was not surprised. I was kind of in the same boat you guys were. It's like, okay, is this Sabine? But then if it's not Sabine, where would be Ahsoka, right? Because at this point in time, we would assume the way Rebels ended that Ahsoka and Sabine are going to be tied pretty much together. So at this point, I was like, that's not her. Plus, just the fact is it's Death Watch, and I know that would be Sabine, right? That would be a clan. True. So I would have assumed at this point it wasn't going to be, whoever's going to play Sabine. Assuming she's going to be making some appearance at some point.
Well, these aren't Death Watch.
No, but clan, but I don't think she would be hanging around with Death Watch or with Bo Katan, is what I'm saying. Like, because we knew that was Bo Katan at that point. Yes. So I assumed that wasn't going to be her. And like Eric pointed out, like, it's completely wrong color scheme. It's obviously Sabine dual wields pistols, or she would have had some type of more explosion, because we all know Sabine loves her explosives. There was no explosion. So
yeah,
she would have already painted some symbol onto the deck of the ship.
That's right. Yeah. Totally. Eric, I know I haven't asked you this before, but are you a professional wrestling fan? Did you know that Mercedes Varnado is a wrestling champion over in WWE?
I'm not that much into wrestling. I mean, back in the day, and when I was younger,
sure,
everybody, I think I went to one of the World Wrestling events and met Hulk Hogan,
sure,
all them. So I remember back in the day, but nothing recent. I don't know any of what's going on at all now. I have a friend, though, that was quite excited.
Yeah.
When he recognized her immediately, even in the trailer. So
yes.
Freaking out, because he's a big wrestling fan.
Nathan and I are huge fans of World Wrestling Entertainment, wrestling in general, but a lot of WWE. We've been to WrestleMania and several other shows together. In fact, Nathan, I'll let you tell the coolest story ever about our wrestling fandom, about how we got to go to Dallas for free.
Yeah, so I walked into GameStop one day. I was pre-ordering or picking up a game. I can't remember which, but I decided to just look around a little bit, and I heard something on a television. I thought, I recognize this voice. And it was Paul Heyman, a wrestling manager. He doesn't actually wrestle, but he
and writer.
And writer. He comes out and announces a lot of the wrestlers. I'm like, I should listen to whatever he's talking about. And he says, hey, if you go to a GameStop and take a picture of yourself, a selfie with the Money in the Bank briefcase hanging from the ceiling, and post it on Twitter, you could win an opportunity to go to WrestleMania. I thought, okay, well, it's not likely that I would win, so I'll just do it right quick. Click. Oh, this is a terrible picture, straight up my nose and everything, but whatever, I'll post it, see what happens. So I texted Scott after I left and said, hey, would you like to go to WrestleMania for free?
And I was well aware of this contest already. And I replied, dude, no way, you won? This is amazing. And he says, no.
Whoa. I didn't win. I just entered. I'm hoping that I win. So a few weeks later, I get this weird message on Twitter, a direct message from 2K Games. I didn't pay much attention to it. I thought, okay, well, they're probably just saying thank you for entering or whatever. I started reading it. I started realizing, wait a minute, they're saying I won.
Yay!
So I texted Scott and said, "Hey, how would you like to go to WrestleMania
And
for
naturally,
free?"
at this point, I'm like, I'm not falling for this again. They're making this up.
Like, no, promise. So I took a screenshot of it. I sent it to him and said, "Look, they actually said I won. We're going to WrestleMania."
For free.
So when was it?
Awesome.
Yeah, it was amazing. They gave us free, airfare, free hotel, and they even gave us like what $1,000 spending money.
$1,000 spending cash. Yeah,
it was amazing.
Yeah,
When was this, guys?
This was WrestleMania 32, right, Nathan? 32.
I believe that's correct.
It was
what, in
2016?
Dallas.
Yeah, it was 2016. I think that's right, Eric.
Cool.
Yes, because I was in between jobs when we went.
Yeah.
By which I mean I had accepted an offer at another place of employment, and that weekend was literally the weekend in between leaving one job and starting
and of course
another one.
Perhaps even the best part about the free hotel, free airfare, of course that's amazing, $1,000, but we got to watch it from one of the luxury boxes at the Dallas Cowboys stadium. So
nice.
Yeah, it was spectacular. Anyway, but said all that to say this: I'm so happy that Mercedes Varnado, Sasha Banks, former WWE Women's Champion, is in The Mandalorian, and she did a great job during these fight scenes. And so Din is saved by them. And after they pull him out of the water, he immediately tells them, "Thanks, but go save the child," and Sasha Banks is the one who gets to jump in the water and presumably kick the crap out of the mama core and pulls out the child. But the pram, the little, hover stroller, is pretty worse for wear after this, guys. I think that may be the last we see of it.
Yeah, no, it was pretty dented up.
Yeah, and she has to tear off the top to open it up there and pull the baby out, and then hands it to a very concerned Din Djarin, who is now even more appreciative and just gushing with thanks to the other Mandalorians, right up until the moment that changes everything. Bo Katan takes off her helmet. Eric, when you saw her take off her helmet, first of all, were you excited to see that it was really Katie Sackhoff? And second of all, what did you think that she took off her helmet?
Well, I mean, the Bo Katan took off her helmet before. We all know that they take off their helmets, so that didn't surprise me. I was very, very excited to see that it was Katie. I was happy that she got to actually do the role because she did such a great job in a cartoon series, and everybody was really rooting for Ashley also to be Ahsoka, but she just isn't the right look. The character doesn't match the voice in this case, but it was great to see that they used her and she did a great job. So that was great to see her there. And it would be nice if if Dave could somehow put Ashley somehow in the Mandalorian, that'd be great. I mean, there's enough roles.
Yeah.
So I think we should all probably do some sort of write-in thing and say, let's get Ashley Eckstein, let's get her a part in The Mandalorian. I think that would be great. So
yeah, excellent. Derek, when you saw this happen and she took off the helmet, what did you think? In earlier episodes of What a Piece of Junk here, we've discussed about after the purge, did something change in Mandalorian society to where that's why they don't all take off their helmets? Or was it something else? What did you think when you saw Bo Katan, one of the most famous Mandalorians, taking off her helmet to talk to him?
I mean, at this point, again, I think we've talked about it, that this is the way that they don't remove their helmet is, again, are the Mandalorians, an endangered species, right? Are they doing it this way, or is there some other reason? Because we all knew at this point that most typically Mandalorians don't, right? That they take off their helmets and that's how they communicate and see each other. And it would have been weird had it gone this way, just because, again, the way Rebels ends and we see Sabine leave off with Ahsoka, so it's probably about the same time, maybe a little bit earlier than this, and she's not wearing her helmet, right? So, and if anything, she would have been more in tuned to the Mandalorian ways, even though she was on Lothal. That I would assume that something again, So yeah, again, wasn't surprised, but again, just happy to see Bo Katan come to real life. fruition.
Yeah, totally. Mr. Miracle, when you saw Bo Katan take off her helmet, just like she always has, how did it impact your current thoughts about Mandalorian society in the time of Din Djarin?
Well, for me, it was a very tense moment because I knew when they faced each other that in the next couple of minutes, we would have an answer to why doesn't Din take off his helmet? Is it something that is like his faction only, or is it a full Mandalorian thing? And of course, that question got answered in spectacular fashion. And they did a great job of making sure that Katie Sackhoff looked like the character did in the cartoon.
Yes.
Headband and
I
all.
love the fact, that they had the headband with the lights on it. I knew who it was. I didn't. I'm horrible with recognizing people's faces, but I could tell who that was. So it was great.
Yeah, and man, she looks so gorgeous as a redhead. Katie Sackhoff's beautiful all the time, but she looks so amazing with that headband and all. For me, though, I'm gonna. All right, you guys will have to rein me in here as I start waxing philosophical. You know how I am about Joseph Campbell and George Lucas. So this to me was finally a repudiation for this Star Wars story. To repudiate all of the things that George Lucas likes to repudiate throughout all of his hero's journey adaptations, whether it be Star Wars, American Graffiti, or otherwise. And that is the idea, this very dogmatic concern of this is the way. People loved that saying in season 1 of The Mandalorian, and I did too. You guys have heard me talk about it and sign off with it on Facebook and all this stuff, but it's not a very Star Wars idea. It is not a very Lucasian idea, and it is antithetical almost to what Joseph Campbell wrote about when he studied the myths and the hero with 1,000 faces. George Lucas has constantly been using Star Wars over the past 4 decades to teach us that there's more than one way. When he talks about things and has his characters talk to each other, it's about truth from a certain point of view, right? So to have your main character, your hero, if you will, Din Djarin, in the Star Wars The Mandalorian, be totally living his ethos of this is the way and there is no other way, is completely antithetical to what Star Wars is supposed to be about. Now, I'm happy with it. I love it. I think it could have been a great story, even if they had him stick to that thought process the whole time. But now that we've had him come literally face to helmet with a true Mandalorian who tells him, no, that's not quite right, and there's plenty more to our society than just what you've been taught, he is beginning the quintessential Lucasian hero's journey. We're going to see, I think that we're going to see Din Djarin confront the fact that maybe I've been too locked in my dogma. I've been too locked in my own particular viewpoint that I've been way too dismissive of everybody else. And I need to grow and learn and change. And he's going to both metaphorically, philosophically, and physically end up this season coming out of his shell. And by that, I mean, by the end of this season, I predict that Din Djarin will realize that the Children of the Watch are, in fact, a group of religious zealots, a cult, if you will, and he will forsake a lot of their teachings and take off his helmet during particular moments in the rest of the season. And he's going to leave that behind.
His character has to grow.
His character has to grow and change. That's right, Eric. As an actor, you know this better than any of us.
Yeah.
His character has to grow and change. And I think that his philosophy will have to grow and change as well. He's going to realize that Bo Katan was right, that there's not just one way.
Well, yeah, it's the first time he's realized that there is more than a different way.
Mm-hmm.
If it's always this is the way, and that's all you know, and that's all you taught from the time you're a child, and somebody grabbed you and saved your life,
mm-hmm.
you're going to believe that. So that now that he's seeing different ways, you're exactly right. He's going to grow and he's going to change. They're setting it up for that. It's obvious.
Yeah. And to me, I'm so happy that The Mandalorian is now taking it's taken its first step into a larger world, because we have a bigger dramatic story to tell now about Din's character growth here. It's just like in The Last Jedi when Master Yoda is talking to Luke about, didn't you read all these old Jedi texts? And Luke says, Well, I kind of read them, and Master Yoda was like,
turners, they were not.
Exactly. Yes. Derek, you were going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I think you're on the right track, but I don't think it's all going to happen this season because that's way too much to happen.
Maybe so.
And again, I think what's going to happen is that the Mandalorian is going to go to in different seasons encounter different factions, and he's going to grow that way. Because, like I said, we obviously got Boba Fett. I said, as we talked about, with the cutscene at the end of episode chapter 9, episode 1 of this season with Morrison, he's not going to come back until season 3, I think, and that's when we're going to have him counter another faction of Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. And again, I think that's where you're going to see the progression of Din through all these different seasons grow in all these different mini story arcs.
Well, it might also be Boba Fett is the person that teaches him that way is not always the way. He may be the person that actually helps him grow and take that mask off. That might be something that's going to happen in the future.
Very possibly.
Yeah,
and another it may not happen this season. There's a lot that has to happen as well with the child first.
Yeah, and go ahead, Nathan.
I could see it being that Din learns that you can take your helmet off in the presence of other Mandalorians this season, but he's only comfortable with other Mandalorians, not with everybody. Right. And then that would leave him room to grow in further seasons to get more comfortable coming out of his shell to everybody.
Another friend of the show, Den Skysinger, who's a Star Wars fan musician that performs at Celebration and whatnot every so often, he posted about this on his Facebook page about how he was never comfortable with "This is the way" because it was too limiting, too dogmatic for it to be a real George Lucas style hero. And he had an excellent quote that he posted from the great Bruce Lee, martial arts kung fu master guy. Bruce Lee says in one of his books, "Use no way as way. When there is a way, therein lies limitation. And when there is a circumference, it traps you in it. And if it traps you in it, it will cause you to rot. And if it rots, it becomes lifeless." And so Bruce Lee was always about moving like water and not being locked into particular dogmatic styles of martial art. And that was why Jeet Kune Do, the way that the style of training that Bruce Lee created, emphasized not being regimented in particular forms and katas, but doing what was necessary to win the fight. So Jeet Kune Do, of course, is famous as being one of the most fluid forms of Kung Fu. And I just love that quote from Lee about how there is no particular way, use no way as way. And I think that Din has, again, taken his first step on that journey in this episode. And I couldn't be more excited about the changes to the story in Chapter 11. And I think we'll look back on this years to come as a pivotal moment in the series.
And we haven't even gotten to the action in this episode yet.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. Yes. Rein me in, Nathan. I'll be here talking all night if we get on to George Lucas and the hero's journey. So, Din basically takes the child after the Mandalorians that came and saved him take their helmets off. He gives them the "you guys ain't Mandalorians" stare and says, "Where did you get that armor?" And Bo Katan politely informs him, "This armor's been in my family for 3 generations. I was born on Mandalore and I fought in the Purge. You are the one who isn't really a Mandalorian, but part of a crazy religious extremist cult."
They know immediately he's a foundling.
Yes, and we get a beautiful Star Wars curse word from Sasha Banks when she says "Dank Ferric," and Axe says, "Great, he's one of them."
Now, I love the contrast here between Chapter 9 and this chapter, where when Cobb Vanth took off the helmet, the Mando immediately knew, okay, that guy's not a Mandalorian. And he was right. Cobb Vanth wasn't a Mandalorian, so his suspicions were confirmed. But now we have somebody else taking off their helmet and, "Hey, whoa, you're not a Mandalorian." Well, not only am I a Mandalorian, I'm a pedigreed Mandalorian. I can tell you my whole lineage here. So I thought that was an interesting compare and contrast between the two chapters.
Totally. But then Din grabs the child, fires up the rockets on the jetpack, and flies away once he tells them, "No, you guys are wrong. This is the way." And we see a beautiful sunset shot of that ship getting blown to pieces by the Mandalorians with Bo Katan because, they killed all those guys. But before Din can basically catch his breath after he watches it blow up, he comes in for a landing back at the port, and the other Quarren have like immediately found out that he and the Mandalorians killed their brothers, and they're all, hey, you killed my brother, so now I'm going to kill your pet. I love the implication that the child is his pet.
I thought that one was interesting because up to this point, almost everybody who's been chasing Mando has been going for the child.
Mm-hmm.
And the Quarren have no clue who the child is. They just want that Beskar.
Yep.
They want the shinies.
And then, Eric, as you said, we hear that cute little sting of music from where Bo Katan and her crew show up again to save Din's bacon, and tells the Quarren, he didn't kill your brother, I did.
Oh yeah. They let them know real quickly who was in charge, and then of course they're gonna go have a drink now. But we're back at the tavern again. So
yes, because we're a consummate Western / Dungeons and Dragons trope of we're gonna go back and have a drink. Although I think it's funny that everybody keeps inviting Mando to have a drink when he won't drink in front of everybody because he won't take his helmet off.
Yeah, that is kind of intense.
So what they need to get him for Christmas is a super long straw so he can stick it up the mask.
Just, right underneath the mask there.
Yeah, it's got some kind of attachment to be all slurp, slurp, slurp. That would be great. Well, anyway, but then they tell him what's up. They're like, we need your help to go and get these weapons that the Empire has been basically... how does Bo Katan phrase it? Help me out, guys. The Empire somehow is using spoils from their planet to get these weapons. Is that right?
Yeah, she did say that. She did say that there were pilferage stuff from Mandalore, and they're just taking it back, basically.
Yeah, and then
from that, yeah.
And then she tells Din that she's gonna get those weapons, and they're gonna take back their home planet and install her as leader of a new Mandalore. And do y'all recall what Din has to say in reply to that about going back to Mandalore?
Well, you can't go back to Mandalore. That's a cursed planet. Mm-hmm. The Empire poisoned it. Anyone who goes back there dies.
Yep.
Somehow.
And then Bo Katan tells him, don't believe everything you hear, implying that Mandalore might still be great, but the Empire has spread that rumor, or maybe people in the cult of the Children of the Watch have spread that rumor so that their members won't go back to Mandalore and find out the truth about the cult.
Somebody is keeping something hidden. Not sure who. I'm not sure what.
We know what her real motive is. She wants the Darksaber.
She wants the Darksaber so she can go back and claim the throne, right?
So does Sam Witwer.
Yes. I don't know.
Katie Sackhoff and Sam Witwer have been having some awesome Twitter interactions in the past few days.
Yeah, Eric, I don't know if you follow Sam Witwer, the voice of Darth Maul, on Twitter, but he basically said, someone broke into my bedroom and stole the Darksaber. I consider this a personal affront. Good times. Yeah. But yeah, so she tells him, if you can help us with our mission, we will tell you how to get in touch with the Jedi. But first, importantly, again, the details. She says to him, when he says, I'm going to take this child back to the Jedi, Bo Katan asks him, what do you know of the Jedi? And Derek, what does he say?
Mm-hmm.
He says nothing. Yes, he's like, I got nothing. He's like, I got nothing. I don't know anything about the Jedi.
Which here's one thing though that did get me in the last chapter when the X-Wings go to initially instigate or trying to figure out what the Razor Crest about it and all this, and he's like, may the Force be with you. And I'm like, how does he know that phrase?
Yeah. Where's he heard that before?
Yeah, that's the one thing that was kind of like, I don't understand where he got that from, because obviously if he would have understood, may the Force be with you, he'd at least understand like, well, what's the Force? And then, he would know a little bit more of like in the beginning of the chapter, season 1, when he knows nothing about the child and what the child does to save him against the rhinoceros creature or whatever. And all that stuff. So that was the one confusing line in the last chapter that I didn't quite understand.
Yeah, how did he get?
It was one of those lines that was just written to make everybody laugh, probably.
Maybe so. So go ahead, Nathan.
That line also appeared in the original Star Wars / A New Hope,
Mhm.
and Return of the Jedi. Jan Dodonna says it before they go to attack the Death Star, and then I can't remember if it was Admiral Akbar or
Yeah, they all
I
say
think it was Akbar. Yeah, but basically everybody says it. But I always got the impression that they didn't all know all that much about the Force. Han didn't know much about the Force, so I think.
Well, they didn't, but they knew about it, like the stories. You know what I'm saying? Like Han would never say it, but like all the rebels would, because you had Luke, and they obviously knew who Obi-Wan was
Hey,
prior to him.
Even Han Solo says it to Luke. He's like, "Hey, Luke, may the Force be with you." When he's
Yeah,
talking-
but that's at the end though, right after Obi-Wan dies and all that stuff. Like he says it just to him to comfort him, right? So that's where it's like, okay, you at least know what the Force is. Then at that point, you at least have heard something, right?
Well, you've heard the expression, but I think it may be such a common expression in that universe that people say it without really thinking about what it means. They basically use it to mean good luck.
But we got that in season 1 when everyone's making fun of Din Djarin with "This is the way." Like they understood that's what it's about, right? This is the way. When he's the whole heist scene, right? With
his
ex-girlfriend making fun of him.
Yes, his ex-girlfriend's making fun of him. Oh, this is the way, and then talks about how he would only take their helmet off when they would make love or whatever. Well, guys, when it comes to the general populace of the Star Wars galaxy and who knows what about the Force. As far as when you're getting direction on set, we should just ask Eric, right? Eric, when you were getting direction on set, did you ever discuss how much does Mace and his sister and their family know about the Force? Was that ever a thing?
We didn't discuss the Force on the set, but you always do discuss your backstory. You're always discussing, who you are, what you did before the scene, that type of stuff. So, He definitely probably does know what the Force is somehow, and that's the reason why he says it.
Yeah.
What he knows, they haven't actually shown us, but he must know something about it. And speaking of that, I mean, not too long before this, does this take place? No, when does the last the sequels that just happened? When
So the Mandalorian takes place before that storyline begins.
About 15 years before.
Yeah, about 15 years before The Force Awakens.
Because I know Han Solo in the sequels, the last sequels, was saying that even he knows the Force is real. It's all real. He's saying that even at one point to Daisy Ridley's character.
Yeah, to Rey and Finn, he tells them on the Falcon, it's true, all of it, So I guess obviously Din knows about the Force, or at least he knows that guys from the New Republic would say that to each other. When he's talking,
like they say, "This is the way." Maybe that's a common phrase. It probably is what it is.
Yeah, but then when it comes time to get down to brass tacks with Bo Katan and them at the tavern, he says, "I don't know anything about the Jedi," and so Bo Katan leverages that in this episode here in Chapter 11 to tell him, "If you come help us with our mission, I'll tell you how to find the Jedi." And so he reluctantly agrees to help somebody because he's desperate to find out what to do with the child. And they go out to the harbor and they all kind of hang out on top of the Razor Crest for a few minutes. And they're talking about what the Empire, or the remnants of the Empire, have been doing here on Trask. And they're using it as almost as a staging area to get these weapons together.
Yeah, no, they talk about that, and of course they have the other Mandalorian has a great line about they can't shoot a bantha. So yeah.
Yes, they can't hit the side of a panther. Right? Yeah. I always tell my wife when it comes to the Mandalorian stormtroopers, she's always saying these guys are the worst. I'm like, well, don't you think at this point in time the Empire's fallen? The only stormtroopers still left around are the worst of the worst, right? The dregs of the stormtrooper corps, because all the good stormtroopers got killed by the rebellion already.
The best troops, the entire legion of the best troops, were all on Endor, and the Ewoks. Well, yummy.
The Ewoks made short work of them.
Oh no.
Yes, Eric, you're right. They tasted like chicken. Yeah. Especially the ones that were in the chicken walkers. Hey.
Okay, I think we've reached our contractual limits of puns.
All right. So Din tells them, I'll help you get the weapons, but that's it. And Bo Katan says, here's the plan. When the ship takes off, and it's a classic old school style Clone Wars Rebels era Gozanti freighter ship. When the ship takes off, they have to go real slow at sublight speeds and all because they can't take off super fast above the atmosphere till they clear the port. So when they're up there, we're going to fire up our jetpacks and basically do our best Sky Pirates impersonation. And we're going to take over the ship.
It's Flash Gordon.
It is Flash Gordon. What do you mean Flash Gordon is approaching on a rocket cycle? Anyway, so yes, they do their best Flash Gordon. They fly up there. They beat up some stormtroopers that are for some reason standing outside of the ship. And I got to see Sasha Banks do the best suplex ever because it was a jetpack assisted suplex. And then she drops that stormtrooper on the windshield of the cruiser or the freighter. So great. So much fun.
You get that classic cartoon effect of the thonk.
Yes, and he flies off the side of the windshield. And we get our first Star Wars crossover with Lost. Speaking of J.J. Abrams and Star Wars, as we were earlier, but Lost being the television series that J.J. Abrams became famous for, Titus Welker, the actor who portrays the Imperial captain of this freighter, was also on Lost. I won't give away who he was on Lost because, well, frankly, it would take me 20 minutes to explain who he was.
And we still wouldn't understand it.
And we still, yes, because it's Lost. Yeah, so he does a spectacular job of being the classic sneering, looking down his nose at everyone, Imperial officer. And Mr. Titus is there just to give it an air of menace. But they basically come off as comedy relief in this episode as the Mandalorians just kick Stormtrooper butt 6 ways to Sunday.
I mean, to be fair,
there was a lot of action in this episode, more so than the other one. And I was just talking about how, we needed more action to take place. Whether they have one main scene that has some action and then the rest of it's all storytelling. And that's one of the things I liked about this episode and why I liked it the best so far this year is because it had more than one action scene.
Yeah.
Which made me happy.
Yes,
now,
me too.
The Mandalorians were ripping through the ship, but to be fair, there were at least 10 of them.
I liked that. I liked that line being almost like a nod to Rogue One, where Cassian Andor says, we're going to make 10 men seem like 100. But in this case, you had 4 Mandalorians that seemed like 10 guys.
I love the pilot's response to that. He's like, sir, we're reading 4 life forms.
Yep. And right as he puts that together, Derek, we hear over the comms, they're Mandalorians. We have to. Did you like all this action in this taking of the freighter scene, Derek? Was that good for you?
Yeah. The only thing I was amazed though was how big the ship was.
The ship was pretty big.
Because I'm sitting there like, how many floors does this ship have?
at least 3, because in addition to having cargo bays and a cargo control, it had an elevator. It was big enough that it had to have some kind of like turbo lift going on.
Well, and not just that, they had to be in the basement because the way the turbo lift worked is like it didn't even start off at 1; it was on 0, and then it went 1, 2, 3. So.
I did love though the attention to detail from Filoni and Favreau. The lights on the top of the elevator panel were exactly the same as the ones we saw in Episode 4, A New Hope.
Yep.
When
that was the first thing in the detention center.
Yep. When they go to the detention center to rescue Leia. Good stuff.
But I did think when it hit the top, though, I didn't think they were all going to pop out of there. I assumed they were all going to start shooting, and like the Mandalorians were going to come from underneath.
Yeah, I thought it was
going to be a trick too. Yeah.
Yes, some kind of subterfuge. But no, these are Mandalorians, and they're like, your weapons cannot harm me, and they just come storming out of the thing, killing stormtroopers left and right. So we get a classic cowardly Imperial officer who stands there long enough to fire 1 shot with his pistol, and then tells the guy, "Close the doors, close the doors." Which ones? All of them, because he doesn't care anything about the stormtroopers that are between him and the Mandalorians. He just wants that door closed.
And he's not bothering to think about where he's trapping them either.
That's right.
Well, not just that, he's doing it while he's hiding behind stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Like you get them. You get them.
Yeah. So where does he trap them, Scott?
He traps them in the cargo control room.
What was that? Where did he trap them?
The cargo control room. Ah! And then we have the perfect scene where he's, yes, like Nathan said, he didn't think at all about the ramifications of where he was trapping them. So, Eric, it's a classic blunder about opening the airlock, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the Star Wars humor everywhere. I really like the humor. I like how they played it. The timing was perfect. The way everything was perfect. The way they edited it together was had me rolling in stitches.
Yes.
But it's typical, It's like, Mace of course puts his hand into a tree, or touches the magic pond and gets stuck under the water. I mean, it's just typical, right? We're always doing stuff we shouldn't be doing, right?
Yep, y'all are always doing stuff that makes the rest of us sit out here yelling at the screen, throwing popcorn at you. What are you doing? Don't touch the water. Don't open the airlock. Anyway, so the airlock gets opened by the Mandalorians because why not? And the Imperial officer, his comeuppance arrives for his cowardice very quickly, and he and the rest of the stormtroopers that are on that floor get sucked out of the side of the ship, presumably to their doom on Trask.
They were falling underwater, so
they might survive because they're not in outer space or anything like that. So
I don't know. I've seen the Mythbusters test this, and it doesn't look good for him.
Yeah, probably still out of air, and then they probably hit a smack of water, right? But maybe he made a cannonball.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe the plastoid armor can help some of the stormtroopers survive. Yeah, probably not.
No, anyway, probably jelly inside.
The pilot's reaction to that younger pilot.
Yeah,
timing so perfect.
Yes, so you get the impression that he's pretty sure they're all dead too.
Well, speaking of the pilot, we obviously get our first look at Moff Gideon.
Yes. So after the Mandalorians take over the cargo bay and Bo Katan picks up the classic communicator, little white circular cylindrical communicator, and tells Titus, hey, we're going to take over the rest of the ship because we're going to take this and use it to help liberate our planet. And Din Djarin goes, what? And before they get a chance to have their little spiel, we see a hologram of Moff Gideon show up and tell Titus's commander, if they've taken that much of the ship, we're not
going to... Long live the Empire. Long live the Empire.
Yes, long live the Empire. You know what to do. So we see the Imperial commander shoot his two other officers, get in the controls of the ship, and just execute a massive nosedive. Now, I have a question. Why do you guys think he didn't have some sort of self-destruct button on that ship?
It was probably in the cargo control room.
Yes. I was curious as to why he didn't do that. And I thought maybe at this point in time,
they got the basic model.
After 2 Death Stars have been destroyed by almost, built-in self-destruct type deals, maybe there's a now Empire-wide prohibition on don't put a giant red self-destruct button on any of our ships because we're tired of having our own ships blow up on us.
Yeah.
Either way, we're in the nosedive, and over in the cargo bay, Din Djarin is telling Bo Katan, this wasn't our arrangement. I was going to help you get the weapons, and then I'm out of here. And she basically gives him a modified, I am altering the deal kind of line, because it's a bit of a throwback to The Empire Strikes Back, because Din Djarin says, you're changing our arrangement. And she, much like his ex-girlfriend in season 1, mocks him by saying, this is the way. So I think that is now Mandalorian tradition. At least once a season, some gorgeous babe has to look at him and mockingly tell him this is the way.
Acceptable.
Yeah. I'm good with that being a Mandalorian tradition.
Yes. So now at this point, they have to work one more time and go and take the bridge. So they hurry up, and right before that, though, Sasha Banks grabs like a really nice, I don't know what type of grenade launcher rifle it is, but
some kind of massive gun, and
she just has the big grin on her face.
Yeah, she looks awesome as she's like getting armed to the teeth, and they're gonna go fight what I didn't even know there were still stormtroopers left on this ship. But like Derek said, this ship's a lot bigger than I thought it was on the it's a TARDIS. It's bigger on the inside. And so they go they get back in the elevator and they storm the cockpit, and they have to fight through the last little squad of stormtroopers first. Eric, when you saw the medium repeating blaster, did you think that that was going to be enough to hold off the Mandalorians, or did you think, oh, those stormtroopers are toast?
No, I knew that, of course, Din was going to have to do some great active and be courageous and do something, because they were just pinned down, and there's just no way they were going to get out of it unless he got all shot up, and which is what he did. He like let himself get shot a bunch of times, and then threw the bombs there and blew it all up. And
yeah. Do you feel like this might have been one of his baptism by fire moments that the hero's journey has to take when it comes to a George Lucas story?
No.
Not yet, huh? He's not there
no.
yet. Not there
No,
yet.
He's not there yet. It's got to be something way bigger than this.
Okay.
Got to be something like, it's got to be something like a Death Star type of thing. Got to be something much bigger.
Yeah. He's got to go fight his Gorax, right?
There you go.
Anyway.
Ari's got to fight a Mudhorn.
Yes, he's got to fight a Mudhorn.
Without having help from the baby.
Without the child. That's right.
Right.
It's got to be. Yeah, that's a great point. It couldn't have been his hero's moment because Bo Katan and all them were there. He's got to do it. He's got to do it alone. You're right. Oh, jeez. Every time I think I got it figured out. Anyway, so he throws the grenades. They go off. They wipe out the stormtroopers. They bust into the cockpit. Bo Katan grabs Officer Titus and basically starts interrogating him about the thing that she hadn't mentioned yet, but we had all figured out she's talking about, the Darksaber. Now, do we think that she's going to get the Darksaber back sometime during this series?
That's an excellent question. If she does, I think it's going to be at the final episode.
Yeah, it's either going to be the final episode or a different season.
Yeah,
there's just too much to go right now. I don't think so.
Yeah,
because we still got to get the band back together. We haven't even done that.
Yes. So Din and Koska grab the controls, and they do their best Obi-Wan and Anakin impersonation from episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, where they're trying to pull the thing out of the nosedive. And they pull it off just in time for Bo Katan to tell Officer Titus, tell me where the Darksaber is, and I'll let you live. And Titus does his classic Empire scene of, you might let me live, but he won't, and bites down on, I was expecting some sort of cyanide pill, like a classic World War II spy, but it was almost like a cybernetic version of the cyanide pill, where he had the tooth that fried his brains. Man, that was pretty gruesome for a Star Wars story.
Well, it was cool though.
It was definitely cool. Eric, did it remind you of watching Luke get electrified by the Emperor in Return of the Jedi, the way the electricity went through his skull and his teeth?
I didn't think about that, but yeah, it does kind of remind you of it. Every little thing that they do in this show kind of is like a throwback, and you hear them talk about it when in the behind the scenes stuff, like the Disney Gallery. It's that they are doing this. They're doing it on purpose. Even when they talk about taking stuff from Caravan of Courage or the stuff from the second Ewok movie, when they were when Quill and him were riding on
Blurgs.
The Blurgs, yeah, they stole that from our movie. So
yeah,
they're just they're always doing that because they're big fans, which is great.
Yeah. Do you ever watch them ride blurgs and think to yourself, that's actually not how you should be doing that?
Well, Mace didn't ride any blurgs, so he wasn't fortunate enough to ride any, but Sindel and them got to go in a cage behind the blurgs.
Yep.
Because they're pretty big. They were bigger in the Ewok movies than
they were bigger. And I wonder if that's sort of like, how we have different species of horses here on Earth? Like a Clydesdale is
one's a Colt and a Mustang, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's probably it.
Yeah.
Maybe they were just younger.
Yeah, maybe that was an older blurg on Endor. Or perhaps on Endor, the Ewoks take better care of their blurgs so they grow to a healthier size.
Right, or the Marauders do, that's for sure.
Yeah, because the Marauders know that they need them to enforce their will. Anyway, but yeah, so
what we were talking about. So yeah, no, I mean, yeah, everything is, again, a throwback. So yeah, it did kind of remind me of that when the Emperor was doing that in Jedi.
Yeah, and so Lieutenant Titus's character dies, and Sasha Banks turns around and tells him, "We got to go," because he sent out a distress call. Because she doesn't know that Moff Gideon came on the holonet and told him we're not sending backup. As far as she knows, a bunch of Imperial troops are on their way.
Right.
So they got to get out of there. So Din gets up, leaves the cockpit, and Bo Katan says, "If you change your mind about joining us to help liberate Mandalore, the offer is always on the table." Some foreshadowing, I think. And then basically tells him, go to the planet Corvus and ask for dun 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 Ahsoka Tano. And I lost my flipping mind.
I'm sorry, who is that? I've never heard that name before.
You're fired.
All right.
Eric, did you lose your mind when he?
I did. And when at first she said forest, I thought about Endor.
Oh man, yeah,
And
you
I
were
said,
all like,
no.
"Oh."
But then she said something different. So I bet I'm curious. If it's a forest planet, are Ewoks on that planet too? I don't know.
They could be
something like an Ewok.
Because we've now seen Jawas on a planet other than Tatooine.
Yeah, off-world Jawas. Maybe they're off-world
Ewoks.
Well,
let me tell you something.
We do know that.
In Star Wars: The Old Republic, we have off-world Ewoks. So,
well, not just that, we have it in canon too, though. Remember, Scott, you didn't read the rest of the Aftermath series trilogy because you hate Chuck Wendig.
I didn't.
But,
I couldn't stomach it. But go on.
I think it's the third story. There is Ras Velas. What's his first name? The spy. They made him on the Destiny card game. I can't think of his name now. But anyways, he has he ends up getting with an Ewok that is like an accountant on Coruscant. So
That's an accountant Ewok?
Yeah, seriously.
Okay, I have to read that section.
and she's like really good with like pads and stuff like this, and she helps them like steal some stuff or whatever they have to do in the story. But yeah,
that's
there's
spectacular.
an Ewok that she's like an accountant.
Okay, well there you have it, Eric. We might actually see new Ewoks.
Hey, wouldn't that be kind of funny since we're talking about it?
Yeah, that'd be amazing. All right, cool. So anyway, she tells Din to go to the planet Corvus to ask for Ahsoka Tano, and then tell her Bo Katan sent you. So obviously Ahsoka and Bo Katan have a history together, and maybe they still communicate. Nathan, have we heard of the planet Corvus before, or is this a new planet?
I misheard it the first time. I thought she said something about Clovis, which is a character from the Clone Wars cartoons.
Maybe I misheard it too. Let me make sure.
Nope, you heard it correctly. I went back and checked, and
Yeah, you said it right.
Yeah, it was Corvus, or Corvus rather, and it is not a place that we have heard of before.
Okay, we just know that it's forested because that's how Bo Katan described it.
It's forested, and there is a city there where allegedly Ahsoka Tano can be found.
Yep. And so Din bails out of the freighter and makes his way back to the port and finds his ship repaired, sort of, in a very Mon Calamari way, with lots of ropes and netting and webbing. And Eric, it's a little Ewokified with all that hand-woven rope.
It is.
Stuff.
It is. It's in a Mon Calamari way.
Yeah, exactly, in a Mon Calamari way.
But one of the things we talked about too when I was talking about on All for Sci-Fi, is Din going to get into some kind of other trouble before he gets there?
Quite possibly.
Or do you think Ahsoka is going to happen in the next episode?
I'm expecting chapter 13 will be Ahsoka. Chapter 12, like you just said, Eric, something else is going to go wrong.
Yeah, that's what we were all saying. Is what we're thinking. It's not going to happen right away, but wouldn't it be so cool if it did, though? But we'll see.
Well, I don't think it's going to happen in either chapter, because if you happen to hit IMDb, as I like to reference sometimes with character names and who's playing what, it does have Sasha Banks showing 3 episodes, and it shows her in chapter 11, 12, and 13.
Okay. So perhaps something will happen to where Din needs the help of Bo Katan and her crew again.
Which is weird, though, because it doesn't have Katie Sackhoff or the other gentleman playing Axe is listed as 3 other episodes, just as Sasha Banks.
Perhaps Koska Reeves.
Sometimes they don't update those things.
Yeah.
Until later.
So
Are they getting
or perhaps Cosco Reeves follows,
Stows away.
She stowed away, or she just straight up trails him in her own starship.
So
We did see in the trailer Grief Karga and
Cardoon.
Cara Dune and the Mythal from the first chapter running away or chasing somebody, or driving what appears to be a stolen Imperial prison vessel.
Yeah.
And we obviously haven't gotten to that chapter yet. So I think it's possible that we take a break from Mando for a minute and see what they're up to, or somehow their storylines might align in the next chapter or two. But I think it's most likely there's going to be at least one chapter, maybe two chapters before we actually get to Corvus.
Maybe so. Yeah. Anyway, and then we get one last nice comedic element, Eric, where the little creepster almost crawls out of the woodwork of the Razor Crest and looks like he's trying to attack Baby Yoda.
Yeah, he's going right after the baby. He sees 12 of them.
Yes, because of the compound eyes. Good stuff.
And there's Din just going with his
knife
and eats it.
It's like he doesn't even look. It's like the ultimate dad move. No look, interception to save the child, and then kills it and feeds it to him.
But have you noticed too, Din is really becoming the ultimate father, even when he drops, we didn't talk about this, but he drops the child off to the frog lady and husband.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We forgot about that before
but he scolds the child before, you better behave. And you know what I'm talking about. Don't not eating those eggs.
Don't eat any more eggs. Yeah.
And so does the internet trolls out there that's saying, Baby Yoda's genociding of the frog race.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I had a big dad moment when I saw him. He goes and picks back up the child, basically picking him up from daycare, and the child is all like, "Let's take one of the baby frogs with us," and he says, "No." He's like, "Nope, I have enough pets already."
Yeah.
Oh, good times.
Sure, it's settling in as the dad. That's for sure.
Very much so. And then the Razor Crest barely makes it into orbit. Pieces are literally falling off of the ship. And he says, I know where I got to take you now, but it's going to be a bumpy ride. Boom, jump to hyperspace, and another piece falls off the ship. Well, guys, I don't know about you, but I give this episode 5 stars out of 5. I mean, I think it was amazing. I could talk for days about the dogma implications, Eric, what were your overall impressions? You've already said favorite episode of season 2.
It is my favorite episode. I believe I gave it on our show. I gave it 4.9 stars. I didn't give 5.
Okay. Because
I'm saving 5 for. And last season, I think 3 or 4 of the episodes got 5 stars. The overall rating was like in the high 4.8s.
Yeah.
But I didn't give every single episode a 5-star. So
yes,
to me, to give something a 5-star. There was only 3 or 4 last year that got a 5-star so far. None have gotten them, but they've been in the high 4s, all of them. This is 4.9 for sure. It's definitely the best episode this season. I'm excited to see, wake up early. I'm going to set my alarm to, 5 o'clock in the morning just so I could see it before I go to work, but I'm excited.
Yeah, good times. Derek, final thoughts on this chapter 11?
Yeah, it's definitely just hits all the cool Star Wars-y, Clone Wars, Rebels, Goosebumps, and everything. So we definitely got our answer on who Sasha Banks was playing. So, we don't know still if Sabine's going to make a live action appearance, but I would think, again, with that, who knows? But again, but it makes me happy that we got this whole Katie Sackhoff thing confirmed because what's the young gentleman that we were joking around a couple episodes back, teasing about Ezra? I can't think of it.
Yeah, it's a real person's name.
It's a real actor.
It started with a K.
Yes. Yeah.
So that means that maybe what he's been joking around and he's like, oops, now he's got to backtrack and do all, but he might be actually doing Ezra, right? So
yeah, it could have all been a smokescreen, right? Yeah. Mr. Miracle, final thoughts on chapter 11, sir?
Well, after being spoiled in the last episode with Trapper Wolf, I'm disappointed with the lack of my fellow cowboy hat enthusiast Dave Filoni. but I will accept Katie Sackhoff. That was awesome.
Yeah.
If I'm rating on the half-star increments, 4.5 to 5 stars, somewhere in there, it's up there.
Good times. Awesome.
Now, the last thing I will say, though, at some point we need to get Bo Katan versus the armor.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing.
Do like a John Wick combat scene.
Oh yeah, that would be epic. All right, great. Well, guys, thanks so much for chiming in on this episode. Eric Walker, as always, a great honor to have you on the show. So between shows, where can folks find you if they want to follow you online, Eric?
Well, of course, with my music and my composing, and also my appearances at conventions, you could find me at ericwalkermusic.com. And from there, you could find all my social media. If you're interested in what we talked about, All for Sci-Fi, that's allforsci-fi.com, where you could also find all our social media, which is simply at All for Sci-Fi, the whole word, everywhere on social media. But that's the easiest way to find me, guys, and I'm excited. So thank you, guys. It was a pleasure. Good times. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on. Mr. Miracle, where can folks find you between shows?
You can find me on Facebook under my real name, Nathan Miracle, or you can find me on Twitter at Gooey Chewy. That's GOOEYCHEWIE.
And Derek, where can folks find you?
On the Facebook, Derek Marsh, and like you mentioned earlier, on the What a Piece of Junk podcast Facebook page. So please, folks, join. We appreciate it. And then obviously on Twitter at HoodieDM83. And then Scott, where can everyone find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook under my real name, Scott Baltman. I am also on Twitter at ScotticusMax, and I do write my own science fiction novels, and you can find my author website at writegreatscott.com. So we want to thank everybody for listening in. Please send us your thoughts and feedback between shows, because we always want to do what we can to make our show more enjoyable for you, the listener, because you guys are the reason that we do this. And of course, we remind you to always respect each other's fandom. All right, Nathan, punch it.